Today we have a guest lecture on real options, and I asked Jan Rune Bergstø to do a presentation about real option. Jan Rune has been an important profile related to real options. Like 10 years ago he started realoptions.no and to make to convert real options from theory to practice and apply it in consulting, for example, related to large governmental investments. And you know, I mentioned sometimes these 5 consultant groups who do external reviews of large governmental investments. Terramar is one of those 5. Okay. Please, Jan, did you agree with my introduction?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome to the most sexy word in project management, isn't it? Real options. It's very fascinating. This lecture will be available in PDF afterwards. Nils will get it and interpret it. Yeah. Okay. Where do I come from? I come from Terramar, as mentioned. This is a consulting company with, I think this is correct, no, 64 entities. And we work within the project project area with project development, analysis and design support, in operational project management, and we do quality assurance as mentioned. And I'm educated from here, from the old NTO back in the 80s, civil engineer, and I have some added education within finance and economic history. And my prior work experience before Terramar was in the oil and gas. I was involved in the largest offshore structure ever, the Troll A GBS, the largest structure moved by humans. And I had a short in insurance, and I have been in Terramar for 16 years now. I'm the head of analysis in Terramar. The content of this lecture is I will start with discussing traditional project valuing versus what is the realities. And then we go on to this question, what are real options in fact? What creates option value? Types of real options. There are many types of real options. And the time we have left we will use on see how we can do calculations on real options. And finally, some critics on real options. Do you know the net present value valuation method? It's common for you. If you evaluate a project, commonly you will have an initial investing phase. You put money into your project, and hopefully that will generate positive cash flows later on. And this approach assumes that you start the project here, invest here, and you have a given time of incoming cash flows until the expected time of this project. And today it's common to do risk analysis on the cash flows on each of these, so we can have a picture of the risk in the cash flows. And the decisions are quite simple. If we calculate the present value of the investment versus the the positive cash flows from here, we accept this project if the net present value of the incomes are larger than the investment. This is familiar for all of you, I hope. But the realities are quite different. This NPV assumes that the project starts at a fixed time. The reality is that the project may be deferred. There is an assumption that the project has a fixed economic lifetime. So this is for 20 years. But in fact, the lifetime of the project can be shortened or expanded later on, decided. We assume that the project operates at the predefined level throughout the whole lifetime. But in reality, the operating level may be decreased or increased. Initially, you may assume that this project produces one project and that the production is continuous. In fact, the project may change to other projects, and in periods, the production may even be stopped. In the net present value calculations, the entire risk is covered by one fixed return on investment in the calculations. In fact, the project risk may change during the time of the project. And the project is evaluated for itself. Evaluate this project, or I put it in standard portfolio perspective. But in fact, the project may create opportunities outside that single project itself. And this list could have been longer. So, if you are really fond of net present values calculations, you should be aware that there are limitations there. The fixed managers do take advantage of the flexibility they have throughout the project life. And this flexibility gives value increase to the project, and this is shouldn't be the way in the traditional net present value analysis. That's the background for the interest in real options. You see the picture? We can have a dialogue here, so just ask and make comments.
You see the connection with while I included real options. This is like very defined, and it's a quantitative approach. So far, we mainly been discussing more qualitative approaches to flexibility.
Okay, what is a real option? This is a kind of a definition. A real option is the right, but not the obligation, to undertake certain initiatives, deferring, abandoning, expanding, such, to a certain cost in a certain time. This in parentheses, because this can be a little more not quite in the definition, but this is a kind of definition of real options. And then we need the first example. A company is planning a new industrial plant to produce a new product. This is a project, okay, we should make this industrial plant. We know that at present the demand for this new project is highly uncertain. Will this be a success or not? You don't know that. As per now. Therefore, a small plant is planned with reduced production capacity. Initially, you just want to build a smaller plant. But this company has made all that they can, both physically, they have acquired the extra land, for example. Financially, they know that they can finance expanding later on. They know that they have the people available, so that this plan may be extended later on if the demand turns out to be favorable. This opportunity to expand is a real option. And this option gives the project added value initially. If you compare two equal small plants, one with this expanding opportunity and one who has not this expanding, the plant with the expanding opportunities has greater value initially. And we can do a real option analysis to reveal the added value from this potential expansion. And in addition, the real option analysis may establish decision rules for when do we expand. It's not obviously an easy question. How much have the market have to rise before we decide to expand the plant? Is this understandable? This is a real option. Okay. What is important when we think about real options? First of all, there has to be high uncertainty risk on the future to make option value. There has to be risk. No risk, no option value. And it has to be very likely that you get new information so that this risk is reduced over time. And there has to be flexibility to respond to this new information. It's very important to realize that all these three has to be in place to obtain option value. Then a real option analysis can reveal substantial values, option values. And if we make a figure of it, this is a standard net present value calculation. You see that there are upside and downside on the risk picture. And here is the expected net present value. If we calculate this with real options, we may be able to reduce this downside. So the worst scenarios on the net present value may be omitted. And on the other side, we can increase the upside. We can get scenarios which is not available here. And as you see, this flexibility adds this extra value to the project. That is the value of flexibility. Okay? As I said, this is very important to realize because some people use the phrase real options on decision situations where they just defer a project, not because of this, but just because they want to save money on the short term. That is not a real option. It's not a real option to just defer a project 1 year to save money. There's no option value in that. The option value is there. That's an important distinction. What creates option value? This figure is in 2 axes. Along this axis is the room for managerial flexibility. And on this axis is the uncertainty or risk. So the option value is highest when there are large risk and you have a high level of flexibility available. This is where the real option values are largest. If the risk is small, the option value is small. And that is the difference between traditional thinking and option thinking. In traditional thinking, you try to avoid risk. You're afraid of risk. In option thinking, you take advantage of risk. Risk is a good thing. Risk is increasing the option value. But you can't have option value if you can't respond to the risk later on. This figure is from a famous book by Copeland, Tom Copeland, and he has some extra things. He said that the option value is largest when the project value without flexibility is close to break even. That's it's not the whole story. But this figure here is very important. Okay, what kind of real options are there? If you read books and articles on real options, you will see that different authors present different words for the type of real options. So this is what I prefer to use. So I said there are 6 main types of real options. It's the option to defer, to change scale, to abandon the project, surprisingly, to switch stage investments and the option to grow. And we come back to each of them. And to make it a little complicated, many projects hold several options and they may interact. And if they interact, they may make some total option value larger than the sum of each of them. Okay, we take the first one. Defer. It's a very common decision situation that you have a project and you say that, okay, we decide and start this project now or at the fixed time. Or we say that no, there is so big uncertainty here that we need to wait until some of this uncertainty is resolved before we start this project. And here we have an important difference between net present value and real option analysis. Because net present value assumes that if you start this year, or next year, or in 2 years or 3 years, they are mutually exclusive alternatives. You have to choose between starting now in 1 year, or 2 years, or 3 years. You can only choose one of them. The fascinating thing with real options is that you can combine all these alternatives into one single net present value and make a decision rule for when you want to start the project. So examples of this option is, for example, let's say that a property company has a greenfield area. They want to make some buildings there. But this market, the market available for these buildings are very volatile. So when do they start building on this greenfield area? They have the option because they own it. They know the uncertainty in the market and they have to make a decision on when to start. So they have a real option value in this greenfield site. In public transport, for example, there are very interested in having railways now, but railways force rather large investments initially. So at present, there is not a market for a railway for a certain stretch, but this is increasing, and the public may close out some areas for future railways. They have the option to later on make up a railway for this stretch. Can you think of other options, deferring options? Examples of that?
Yes, maybe you're going on a camping trip or a cabin trip. You can check the weather forecast and postpone the trip if the forecast is bad.
Yeah. You have the option to go.
Is it also one thing if it's much pressure on the market to postpone until it's less pressure and then the price will probably go down?
Yeah. That's what they do in building area or in infrastructure projects. Some projects are hold because it's so heating in the market. The projects are already, you have the option to start in there. That may add value to the project. This is another kind of an option. If during the operational life of a project, if things turns out to be better than expected, if you're able to increase your production, that is valuable. And the opposite, things turns out to be worse than expected. There is in fact a value to be able to decrease production. But if a project should have this kind of options, commonly they have to do some additional initial investments. And these may be too expensive compared to the option value. You don't know that before you have calculated and evaluated that. But these kind of options may be very valuable during the operational lifetime of the project. An example here is close to what we talked about as the first example. If you plan a production plant, you can decide between making a big plant initially or a smaller one, but have the option to expand later on. And which is very actually, in fact, in many places, when you plan for a new airport, you build one initially, but the traffic in the airports, for example, on Gardermoen, have increased incredible for the last 10-15 years. So there is a big option value to be able to have the area to be able to make a new runway later on. If you didn't purchase enough land initially, you don't have this option. But if you purchase, then you can make this additional runway later on. So if you compare two airport projects, one with expansion possibility and one without, that with the expansion possibility is more worth initially, because you have the option to expand, build a new runway. And the other examples? This one is a special. In some cases, a project should be abandoned before the expected lifetime, because it turns out to be non-profitable. And it's not intuitive But this option may have value initially. When you decide on a project, there may be an option added value with the project because it may be easy to abandon that project. And I would say that this option is exercised too seldom. And that in part is due to the lack of the understanding of the sunk cost principle. You know the sunk cost principle? Sunk cost principle says that all you have eaten until today is irrelevant for the decisions you take later on. All you have invested in a project is irrelevant if the rest of the life of the project is non-profitable. So, example of this, maybe a company is developing a new project, but they have major risks related to the market and some public approval because the use of chemicals. The option to abandon this project is valuable. If we go on to public infrastructure, if you evaluate bus versus subway, it's obvious that the bus alternative have an abandoned option value initially because it's rather easy to phase out the buses. It's complicated and expensive to phase out an existing subway. This is perhaps the real option type, which is not so easy to understand, but it's a fact, an initial value if the project can easily abandon if the risk in the operational time is large.
Why is it difficult to phase out a subway? Why is it more difficult than a bus? You say that the bus is rather easily phased out, but not the subway. Why is that? Why is it more difficult?
This is if you have built all the lines and such things for the subway. The buses they grow in the streets, existing streets, and you can just say that okay, from tomorrow the buses do not run there. But the subway have tunnels and lines and such things.
Yeah, but you could still abandon it even if you build the tunnels if it doesn't pay off. Or
Yeah, but it's the point is that it's much easier and less expensive to and that makes value initially if the uncertainty with the market is large.
yeah, so just because the initial cost is less than in the subway.
No, they may be, but the option value, let's say that the market for this transportation is very uncertain. So perhaps in 10 years' time, the market for this line is not so big anymore because people travel other ways or other directions and such things. Then it's better to have a transportation system which is easy to abandon than one which is expensive and hard to abandon.
Can you take some other examples of projects that are not able to abandon? Can you take examples of other projects that you're not able to abandon?
If let's say you have in Norway, it's, if you want to cross a fjord in Norway, then you can think of it. Okay, we just do it with ferries, or we make a bridge or a tunnel under the floor. And later on, there's a risk that there will come new transportation systems in 10 years making this crossing not so cost effective. It's not, no one will travel there. Then the option to easily close down the ferry system is valuable initially compared to the bridges or tunnels. But this is the hardest option to grasp, of course. Did you see that? Switch. This is a fascinating option, the switching option. You have if you have the option to switch between different inputs and states of production sites during the lifetime, that can be beneficial, of course. But this option is hardly able. You don't have. It's not easy to get this option unless you do some large investments initially. Here is perhaps the most fascinating type of options to calculate. The gold price is volatile. You know that. The gold price is varying from year to year. And gold mines, they are closed and open depending on the variation in the gold price. So how much is a gold mine worth? Then you need to do option models to answer this question, because every opening and every closing costs money, and how do you value this switching option? More near is this. The heating of buildings are a significant cost. And you may invest in 2 or more different heating systems in a building. And oil and electricity and such things, they have volatile prices. So if you invest in different systems, you can choose the heating system which is cheapest every month. This option to switch between, let's say, electricity and oil is of course valuable, but you need to do more investment initially to be able to have this option. Is it worth investing in both oil and electricity initially to be able to have this switching option? This one is so that you plan the project in phases to keep options open as long as possible. If we start here with the first decision of this project, you can invest in further design. You can decide that you go for a full investment now, just go on, or we can reject the project. If we do this, we have options further on. If we do this, we don't have any more option value. And again, we have a new option, a new decision here. Invest in further planning, a new full investment decision, or reject the project. If you choose these, option value is lost. So, if you plan the project in phases like this, you can hold on with option values for a long time. And that can make added value to the project. And so of course in the pharmaceutical industry this is widely used because the uncertainty is so large, both with the production processes and the market. So they do it in this kind of stage. And research and development projects is an obvious candidate here. Examples? Your own? The grow option. When you evaluate a project, commonly you set up, okay, is this project profitable for me? So you evaluate it, isolated, this project for itself. But this first project or more projects, they can be an admission ticket for further development for new projects later on. So even if this first project is non-profitable, it makes an option value which in fact makes it profitable. I worked for, I had one of my clients were a large Norwegian property company, and they invested early on in the Baltics, right after the Soviet Union fall. And the first projects was not that profitable, but those first projects gave this company a unique position in these countries. They have all the contacts, all the knowledge of the rules, everything, so that when these markets grow regularly, they had a unique position to take advantage of those first projects, which were minor, not so bad, not so good, but they had got this option. So the first project should have got an added value, option value, because they made it possible to make good projects in the Baltics later on. And in public infrastructure, this is a large discussion now, in fact. If a new road or something is not have low benefits initially, but the new way may lead to growth in an area, and this option for further growth should be put as an added value to this way initially. This is a growth option. Any other examples on grow options?
Would this be like kind of program portfolio perspective, that you can see that this project is not good on its own, but because it's increasing the value of the program or portfolio, it's a good project?
Yeah. But you have to distinguish between traditional portfolio thinking and an option thinking, because here we talk about projects now which gives options for other project later on.
Okay. So this would be like in the start of things, not just one project among others. This would be a project and then maybe we turn it into a more. Okay.
with this project, which is not profitable, I've got the option
Yeah.
to do a profitable project later on. And I wouldn't have that option if I didn't do the first project first. That's an option value. Yeah. Okay? Then 15 minutes break. Let's say I have a business plan that I need for 2 years for product development. In each of these years, I have to invest $500,000 in each quarter as a cost, development cost. And I know if I want to launch my own brewery with all the things I need for producing this beer, I have to invest 12 million. And today I expect sales to be 6 million per year. And based on this, I can estimate a value of this company to be 22 million. Okay? Then I can make a simple net present value analysis. I invest $500,000 in each of these quarters and 12 millions to launch my brewery. And I know that the company value, the value of all my saving on the beer is 22 million. Yeah. I said that this investment is not so risky, so I use discount rate of 5%, and I use discount rate of 21% on those incomings. Okay, then I can calculate a net present value which is negative. So that is all these investments here in product development and the final rollout is larger than what I can expect from my sale. So then this project should be abandoned. Or it's obvious that this project should be abandoned. Because the net present value is negative. No. In 2 years, I have no obligation to launch the full project. I've used 2 years on product development, but in 2 years' time, no one forced me to launch this project. And no obligation. So the decision to launch this project is like an option. By spending on product development in 2 years, I get a right, but not an obligation, to launch the project in 2 years. So I have bought myself an option with investing in product development. In 2 years, I will launch the project if it's profitable to do it at that time. So, there is flexibility here. I have an option. But is it worth to do this? Now I need some calculations. And unfortunately, this is a little complex. Here we can use formulas from financial option theory. And it looks like this. So, but with these 5 inputs, I can calculate an option value for this project. This calculation is a little kind of a black box, but the value of this option in 2 years are close to 5 million. Today, this option in 5 years is worth 5 million. Okay, how do I know all these figures? These have been calculated based on expected sales. This is fixed. This is market information, and this is related to this. So the value of the company and the volatility I can get from a simple risk analysis. And then we get this one. A traditional net present value calculation is that this is the present value of the project, of the product development. This is the present value of the launching. This is the present value of the incomes. And as we saw, this net present value is negative. If we do it real options, we have the same present value of investment before launch. This is the product development. And we have calculated the option value there. So when we evaluate this project as a real option, the project is profitable.
But this doesn't change the cash flow you get and the amount you put into the project, so your rate of return is unchanged, even though you value the real option. Right.
Yeah, in this value options, I do not use the rate of interest for the incomes. It's not included in calculations. I use that information on the risk on the incomes. Fascinating. You can do product development for 2 years, and if you, at the end of that period, believes in this project, then you can launch it. If you don't, you lose, of course, the money you have invested. But the option value today is larger than that. Did you see that? You can lose this, but the option value is larger. So, as a decision, you should go for this project because of this inherent option you have to launch after 2 years.
Yeah, I didn't understand it fully. So if everything goes well and you go for the real option calculation and you choose to launch the project, you can have 1.13 million when you're finished in today's money, or
No, what you get may be quite higher.
okay.
So this is not a fixed outcome, but the option value today is at such a level that you should go for this project, because today the project is profitable.
Because of the uncertainty, or
Yeah. And what is fascinating here is that the risk here, which is expressed here, the more we increase this risk, the more the option is value. Option value increases with increased risk. Because then you can get all out of the upside. The point is that you can get all here on the upside on large incomes, and you can cut the low incomes. You don't go in that scenario.
you take away some of the downside.
Yeah. That's why you have this option value. Is it complicated? Or fascinating? Or so where does this additional value come from? Large uncertainty. As you saw on this here, the incomes may vary between 3 millions and 30 millions. So the income is rather uncertain. That makes value to the option. And we assume here that you gradually, during the product development phase, get more information. And we have realized now that you have the flexibility to abandon the project at the end of this 2-year period. And we can learn something from this, that frequently you have options in your projects which you do not realize. They are there, but you haven't seen them. So the project has a larger value, but you haven't realized that. In the financial world, option world, you talk about two kinds of options. In fact, you call it American options and European options. European options, they have to be exercised at a fixed time, while American options can be exercised during a time period. If this project had been evaluated as an American option, that is, you could have abandoned the project at every quarter of the development period, then this option value would have been even higher than we have calculated. So you can get even more option value if you have the possibility to exercise the options in a time period and not at a fixed point. Was this very complicated? It's a new way of thinking for most of you. But you see, this had value to some projects. You should perhaps haven't realized that. Okay. We can make another example. If you remember, we have now shown an example of an option which you could calculate with formulas. But most projects are more complicated than that. Now we should take a look at this so-called binomial calculations. Then we spread out the uncertainty in the project this way and calculate option values and roll it back here with certain calculation rules to calculate the option value. Here, a project has an initial investment of 105 millions. And we've done a risk analysis of the incomes and got that net present value without flexibility is 100. We have the volatility, and the net present value is negative. Incomes are less than the investment. But in the first 5 years, we have two options. We have an option to increase the capacity with 20% if we invest 50 million. Or we can reduce capacity with 25% and save 25 million. So, what is this flexibility worth? Is this project profitable, or is it not? This is the calculation sheet for such a calculation. I can't go in all details here, but this is this tree for this project, and we can calculate the value of this expanding to be 10 millions. So the option to expand this project with 20%, even if we invest 50 million to that, gives an option value of 10 millions. And the option value of be able to reduce is less, it's only 1.1 million. But this option here to increase, to expand the production makes this project profitable. It was not based on standard net present values alone. But this option makes this project profitable.
And you're assuming that you're able to sell more and have some scenarios with regards to that, or maybe increase production because you'll be able to sell more, right?
Yeah.
You have to do some analysis on
There is big uncertainty about the market.
Yeah. So
And if the market goes up, then you expand. And this option to be able to expand for investment, even if you do this investment, has a value of 10 million in total. So you see here that these blue figures are the market, and the red are the option values, and you see that you don't do this option down here in the low outcomes, but you have option values here in the high outcomes.
You said the volatility is 15%. You always assume that it's as likely that the market will go up as it will go down when you're doing this.
Yeah,
It's never like that, yeah, okay, it can go maybe 20% up, but 5% down.
no, in fact here it's skewed.
Yeah,
It's,
okay.
Yeah.
That's why it's more value with increasing option than the other one.
Yeah, one of the reasons. So, but you don't know today if you will exercise this option. You don't know. That depends on the market. But the option value to be able to do this expansion has value today. Even if you never will exercise it, today it has a value.
We had a question about portfolio.
Yeah.
In investment banking, I assume you typically buy several options, and on average you make money if you follow a Black and Scholes formula. Would it be the same for a project portfolio? If you're a medical company, for example, and you develop medicines for different diseases, and here you have options to, if your medicine will turn out to be in high demand, you will make money from some of the medicines, but not from others.
Yeah. But I have it on the last slide, in fact. So we can return, because this is one of the problematic things with real options. If you get a portfolio of many options, that is complicated. So we'll come back to it. And then, as modeling, this is an example of how we use simulations in option valuing. I mentioned the gold mines here, and that's it's a fascinating example. If you should lease a gold mine for 10 years, how much do you pay for that? Gold mines are closed and opened based on the gold price. So if a mine is open, you can keep it open, or you have always the option to close it down. But if you close it, you have a closing cost. And if a mine is closed, you have the option to open it. You have an opening cost, or you can keep it closed. Therefore, you will not, because of this cost, you will not open a closed mine at the exact level of gold price which makes it profitable for you. There is another level of or a gold price level which force you which makes you want to open this mine. This is a switching option. So how can we do this? We need, of course, some input here. Production, how much gold do you produce? What is the operational costs? What is the price of gold today? How is the gold price historically? What is the cost of close down, cost of opening? What is the risk-free rate? Or, in fact, is the mine open and closed today? What we do then is we make a 10-year model of simulated gold price. From what is the expected variation of the gold price for the next 10 years. And then we try one level of at which level we should, of gold price, we should close a mine which is open, and another level or which level should we open and mine which is closed. If we choose this and do a simulation, we get the net present value for this mine. And then we test for other scenarios of these two levels until we find the max net present value. Combination of opening and closing levels. Then we have the value of this lease. And we have decision rules when we should open and close this mine based on the gold price development. It's a very fascinating modeling
One thing, does this kind of simulation open for the possibility that this gold mine in itself can affect the price?
No.
Oh.
No. But that big mines, it's very seldom that you do any risk consideration where you yourself is dominating the market in any way.
Yeah, but not dominating, but for example, Saudi Arabia is not dominating oil, but it is said to be one of the countries that actually can affect the oil price themselves. And that will, of course, like influence simulations.
Yeah.
If you were Saudi Arabia.
Of course, there's nothing preventing you from take that into consideration. This is a more stylistic example.
Yeah.
This is the output from such analysis. Okay, then I'll take a real case which we did. This was pharmaceutical production plant planned for some rheumatism medicine. And our client, they had a main plan of first build a first stage plant, and then they should have a later expansion in 5 years. That was their base case. But the market uncertainty was very big, and they had some technical challenges which they hadn't solved, in fact. So their main plan, fixed main plan, should be changed to an option way of thinking. The first option here was obvious. Can we defer the first stage? There are at least technical challenges there. So the first option here is to defer. If you don't defer, you go straight into this first stage at once. If you defer, this first stage will come later on. And the expansion here is not fixed. It's an option. When you have done this first stage, you decide if you should expand or not. But you should not fix that decision here now. And obviously this project could be abandoned. Then we made a model when we first compute the present value of this project without uncertainty, flexibility. Then we remodel this uncertainty in this kind of binomial trees. And we incorporated the different options here. You see that there are two options. There are the defer option and the expand option, and they are closely connected. And then we can calculate the final option value of this project. And here, the option value was very good, very large, because there was so big uncertainty in this project that the option value of thinking in options here made this project double valued compared to this fixed project. Now, okay. Oh, I'm going to the last one, skip. And one of your questions. I've been fascinated by real options for 10 years, 12 years. 10 years ago, I hoped that this should be a revolution in project evaluation. And it hasn't been, to be honest. And what we see today is that real option thinking in qualitative terms is spreading. When we do these quality assurances for Department of Finance on large public projects, we do real option discussions in the early phases. Are there any real options inherent in those alternatives we evaluate? But we do not make complicated models for it. We just discuss it on our own level. And there are, of course, many reasons why this real option improved haven't been so widespread. So the skepticism here can be different things, but one thing is that it's complicated in real options to evaluate the underlying project. If you, in financial option, the underlying project is the stock traded in a market. You know exactly what the value of this stock is. When we work with projects, this is complicated. What is the value of a project as input to an option analysis corresponding to the value of a stock which is traded, and you know exactly the price. This one, you have seen it already. Real option calculations are complicated. And many will feel that this is kind of a black box. It's hard to see what's going on behind the scene in a real option calculation. There are, of course, challenges with option exercising. Even if you initially said that you should exercise and can exercise, may exercise this option in 2 years, you may have challenges with this exercising. It's not that easy. And then, if you make up a project portfolio and you have several real options in that project portfolio, you get a very complex risk picture. It's not easy to evaluate the risk in a portfolio with several real options into that portfolio. You can, if you have one big real option there, it's not that complicated. But if you have several, your risk complicated. And this one, you know the Enron history. Enron was a big American energy company, which was very creative in their bookings. They collapsed and collapsed together with Arthur Andersen, one of the biggest
Auditing companies.
auditing companies in the world. And unfortunately, Enron was considered an innovative user of real options. But many see that the net present value alone is inadequate to evaluate projects. Many recognize the option way of thinking. I hope you, in the last 2 hours now, I hope you recognize that option thinking is important. You can't neglect that. It's there. If you neglect options, you will lose. And no one has presented an holistic alternative for real options. If you accept the net present value inadequacy, then no one has presented an alternative to that. And as some said, to decades net present value to become widely accepted in practice. Perhaps real options need at least that time. You can contact me later on if you... Okay, this was complicated. It's a fascinating world, but it's complicated. Any final questions? This presentation will be available in a few days.
Okay, very good. So we've seen that value of flexibility can be quantified.
Yeah. But we see that perhaps the greatest value, the greatest benefit of real option thinking is qualitative. Seems at least for the moment. But you can quantify it. And sometimes you need to convince some decision makers that there is a real option value.
Okay. Very good. Fascinating. Okay, yeah. Thanks a lot, Jan, for taking the trip from Oslo to here. So, present for you. We really enjoy having you here.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.